I don't think there's a sound that will ever haunt me more than the quiet way my son whispered, "Mommy, why doesn't Grandpa like me?" He was sitting on the back porch, knees pulled up to his chest, wearing the little red jacket he loved, the one with the tear on the sleeve I hadn't gotten around to stitching. His face was pale, his lip was trembling, and he hadn't touched his plate. Not that there was much on it. I stared at him, then at the tray. One piece of stale bread, a cold hard-boiled egg, no water. We were staying with my parents for 2 weeks, just 2. My lease had ended early, the new place wasn't ready, and I had no other options. I told myself it would be okay. It was temporary. Tolerable. But I forgot that tolerable for me meant barely surviving for my son. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video? My parents weren't monsters, they were worse. They were subtle, controlled. They weaponized politeness. They never screamed, but they always made sure you knew your place. I grew up hearing things like, "You'll never be enough, but at least be useful." Children should be grateful, not comfortable. Don't be dramatic, we're just toughening you up. So, when I got pregnant young and chose to raise my son without involving his father, they never said anything out loud. But every gesture, every comment, every sigh, it all screamed the same thing. You failed again. It started on day 1. We walked into their house, bags in hand, and my mom was already wiping the counters with tight, angry circles. She looked at my son like he was a puddle she had to step around. My dad barely nodded, then said, "Your room's upstairs, don't expect much." I thought maybe they just needed time. They didn't. The next morning, I came downstairs to find they had made breakfast for themselves, scrambled eggs, toast, orange juice, and left nothing for us. When I asked, my mom shrugged. "We figured you'd take care of yourselves." My son Jamie was 5. He didn't understand why there wasn't a plate for him. I gave him the apple from my purse. Later that afternoon, I found my dad standing by the fridge, arms crossed, as Jamie tried to open it. "Where do you think you're going?" my dad said. Jamie froze. "I was just gonna get yogurt." "You think food grows here for free?" he snapped. "He's just hungry," I said, stepping in. My dad looked at me and said, "Then teach him how hunger works. If he wants to eat, let him find a dumpster." I blinked. "What?" He repeated it. "Go find a dumpster." And then my mom laughed. It wasn't a big booming laugh, just a cold, quiet chuckle like she was watching a sitcom. Jamie didn't cry. He just stepped back, sat on the floor, and folded his hands in his lap. I didn't react right away. I don't know why. Maybe because I was in shock. Maybe because I'd spent my whole life convincing myself that things weren't that bad, that it was just their way. But when Jamie asked me that night, "Why doesn't Grandpa like me?" everything inside me snapped. I didn't scream. I didn't storm out. I waited, planned, and decided exactly what I was going to throw out first. The next morning, I got up before anyone else, made Jamie toast, packed our bags, dressed him quietly, gave him his favorite cereal bar, even though it was my last one. Then I walked through every single room of that house. And I threw things out, not in a rage, not in destruction, but methodically. The fruit they wouldn't share, gone. The old blankets they once refused to let Jamie touch on the couch because he might ruin them, donated. All the files I'd organized for them 2 nights ago, shredded. The photos of me on the hallway wall from when I was a kid, the ones where I was smiling but had bruises on my arms they thought no one could see, ripped up. I didn't touch their valuables, I didn't touch their furniture. But everything I had ever given to that house, love, labor, silence, I removed. And then I took Jamie's hand and walked out the door. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't even close the door behind me. Because what do you shut when the home was never open to you in the first place? 2 days later, we were sleeping in my car outside a motel. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't even warm. But it was ours. I'd sold a few things from storage stuff that didn't carry memories. I scraped together enough for a week at a cheap extended stay. The kitchenette was stained, the sheets were thin, but Jamie smiled when he saw the mini fridge. "Mommy, he said, pointing to a plastic-wrapped muffin I bought from the gas station. Is that for me? He asked like he was scared the answer might still be no. I nodded, holding back tears. All yours, baby. And in that moment, I knew. It wasn't about punishing my parents. It was about cutting the umbilical cord they wrapped around my throat and called family. It was about never letting my son carry that weight again. I didn't reach out to them, not once, not to explain, not to argue, not even when I got a text from my mom 3 days later. At least tell us where you left the paperwork for Dad's pension forms. You were organizing them. Then another. That sewing machine you took was mine. I hadn't taken anything, but the idea that they thought I'd stolen something small after everything they'd drained from me emotionally felt like irony folding in on itself. I didn't reply, but I remembered that file. His pension paperwork. I didn't take it. I did leave it behind with coffee spilled across it. Not maliciously. But I didn't wipe it off either. A week passed. I got a call from one of my childhood friends, a woman named Krista. She worked at a local after-school center and said they were looking for help with admin, snack prep, and weekend coverage. I took the job. Minimum wage, short shifts. But honest work. The kids liked Jamie. They treated him like a person, not a burden, not a visitor, not trash. He bloomed. I found us a tiny basement unit 2 towns over. One window, rusty faucet, but we made a routine. I taught Jamie how to scramble eggs. He taught me how to fold a paper swan. It wasn't much, but it was everything I'd never had. Meanwhile, I heard the stories trickle in from Krista, not gossip, just facts. My dad had gone to his retirement financial planner to submit his paperwork. They told him the copies were incomplete, something about signatures missing, stains smearing the dates. He needed to redo the forms, but the original copies were somehow misplaced. I didn't plan that. But I didn't regret it either. He had to go to the county office himself and refile everything. Only he didn't know how. Because for 30 years I had filled out the forms. I had booked the appointments. I had written the checks. While my mom called me just a freeloader under her breath, I was the one holding up the house like scaffolding. Now, they had to do everything alone. They'd spent a lifetime convincing me I was worthless. Now they got to feel what it was like without me. A month later, I bumped into my mother at a corner store. She didn't recognize me at first. My hair was tied back. I wore a borrowed coat. I carried a bag of discount groceries. But Jamie was beside me, tall, proud, and healthy. When she saw him, her face twitched. She stepped forward like she was going to say something, maybe pretend to care. Then Jamie stepped behind me. Didn't look at her. Didn't say a word, and her hand dropped. You look different, she said. I just smiled. I finally ate. Her mouth opened, then closed. She stood frozen in that doorway while I walked past her and paid in cash, the same cash they always said I'd never earn. A year passed. 12 quiet months of peace, of growth, of healing. I didn't tell Jamie much about my parents. He didn't ask, and I didn't volunteer. He was busy learning the alphabet, catching grasshoppers in the community park, and calling me Chef Mommy every time I made instant pancakes. We didn't have much. But I had finally built a home where silence didn't feel like danger, where dinner didn't feel like a privilege, where love wasn't rationed like oxygen. Then, one afternoon, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost ignored it. But something told me to answer. "Hi," said a stiff voice. Is this Erika?" My father. I could hear the hollowness in his breath, like he had practiced the call and still didn't know how to finish it. I didn't say anything. He took that as permission to keep going. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video. I figured you might want to know that your mother fell last week, broke her hip. I've been trying to get things together here and... He trailed off. You know, we're not as young as we used to be. There it was. The angle. The subtle hook behind the words. He wasn't calling to apologize. He was calling because they needed something. I'm not sure how to file her medical insurance, he continued, voice tightening. You always handled that. I thought maybe if you had a few minutes, you could come by and help. I hung up. No rage, no panic, no tears. Just one smooth click. I set the phone down and stared at the wall for a long time. That night, I sat with Jamie on the floor and opened a box from under the bed. Inside were photos, letters, documents, things I hadn't looked at in over a year. I pulled out one photo in particular. Me, 7 years old, standing by the kitchen table in an apron, pouring soup into 3 bowls, none of them mine. The caption in my dad's handwriting read, "Our little helper, finally earning her keep." I put it in the trash. Jamie peeked over. "Was that you?" I nodded. "I don't like that picture." "Neither do I." The next morning, I walked to the bus station with a crisp envelope in my hand. I didn't send revenge through lawyers. I didn't take them to court. I didn't show up with a camera or a confrontation. Instead, I dropped one envelope through their front door mail slot. Inside was a printed list, each item numbered. Rent payments I'd covered without thanks. Grocery bills I'd been told I owed them. Caretaking hours logged while my brother played video games. The night I missed prom because Mom wanted the bathroom to herself. The $250 I lent them from my college refund check. The dinner my dad threw across the room because I used the good plates. The bruise on my spine when they hit me with the belt because he's your brother, serve him. At the bottom I'd typed, "This is your total balance, paid in full. Do not contact me again." Nothing else. I never heard back. But I know they opened it. I know because Krista called me 2 weeks later and said she saw my mother limping through the pharmacy alone, struggling to push the door. No one helped her. And my father? He showed up at the community financial office with a scribbled notebook, begging the clerk to help me figure out the paperwork my daughter used to do. She said he looked like a ghost. Today, Jamie is 8. He reads chapter books on his own. And when he's full, he puts the leftovers in the fridge and says, "We save food in this house, right?" "Yes," I tell him, "because we know what it's worth." He doesn't remember the day Grandpa told him to eat from a dumpster. But I do. In the kitchen we cook in now? It doesn't have a single thing from my old house. Not a spoon, not a plate, not even a crumb. I threw everything out. Just like they threw out love, and I left them with what they gave me. Nothing.